This lunette I'm going to show you is a good place to begin. It's a pretty simple design, only requires a few tools as well. I have here. I've got a block of red oak, and I've struck a bottom and top margin with a marking gauge, and there's 3 inches between those margins. And I'll just strike a line, a 90-degree line right between them, and set my compass to that distance between the margins. And I lean on this leg of the compass and describe a half circle like that. And then move over here. And yeah, I'll get a quarter circle beside it. And one this way as well. And then I close down the compass and use the same center point to get an inner border for this design. Moving over to the other center points, do the same thing, and then eyeball another setting halfway between them. So 3 half circles form each outline. And now I'll strike those lines as well. And that's the extent of the layout. And the beginning steps in carving this are using a V-tool to outline it. Pardon me. So I've just got a few repeats of it here, but if this were 4 feet long, there'd be, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 8 of these, and I'd carve them sort of assembly line fashion. I always go, I'm right-handed, I carve from my right to my left, holding the tool down low like that, and carve down there. Now I go to the next lunette and do the same cuts on those. And the reason for that is just consistency, and also I'm in one posture, in one position, so I'd march all down the line. In a piece that's a foot long, it doesn't make a difference, but in a piece that's 4 feet long, it does. Now I've changed my body position. Here, my hips were parallel to the bench, and I was turning like that. Now, my hips are sort of perpendicular to the bench, and I'm still really going in the same direction. Just starting from the bottom and coming up to the top. I could feel that happening. The hold fast, let loose. So that is the beginnings of the V-tool work, maybe the extent of it. And from here, I'll use some gouges to start to define the leaves for this. And the one I'm using is pretty big. It's an inch wide. And it's like a Swiss-made number 7. This one is an English tool. And might have a different number. I don't see a number on it. It might have been printed, not stamped. And I'm going to, well, I'll just hit it right here and show you. So I'm going to start to strike these leaves, this foliage in here. The first strike comes off of that 90-degree line. So using a clock format again from 12 o'clock, I'll set this down. I don't want it to be real close to that center line, because if I made a very narrow leaf like that at the top, the short grain here might cause it to break off. So you lean this outward like that and like that. The gouge is pretty vertical, if anything tilted toward the flute, and that helps prevent, the way to look at it is if you did it the other way, leaned it away from the flute like that, as you drove that in, you'd lift this wood up. So it's either plumb or leaning forward a little bit, like that. And then I come down here at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock and do the same sort of thing. I'm going to have a holdfast problem this morning, it sounds like. When that happens, I often will stick a shaving in that hole. Like that. Even better if that shaving is green. That one is not. So these cuts, as I said, they radiate off the top there, and then the next one meets it and comes back into the V-tool line. So it's just a series of lobes around that perimeter. If you don't have a tool this size, then you use what you've got, and you might have smaller leaves than that, which is perfectly fine. Mostly this is about just learning how to use the tools to design these patterns and then to cut them. The background is going to come out of there. Let's start it with that same tool, actually. I'll just now tilt the tool down like that and cut towards that incised bed and wiggle it a little if you need to get that to let go. Like that. Realize I get right in the way half of the time. And at this stage, you could just leave this as it is for that background. And I'm shooting this at 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. And I've blocked off some of the windows here at the bench, but nice raking light coming in from my left, which gives me these nice shadows around those facets that I've created. Because that background is not cut down flat. There's this resulting ridge from the meeting of this cut and that cut, which can be a really nice effect, and lots of carvings leave that. I'll show you how to cut it out too, but you can just leave that back on just like that and get a nice effect from it. If you choose to take it down, I take it down with that 1/2 inch wide number 5 in the Swiss carving tools. And this tool is what we call crowned. That edge is rounded. I find that real handy for slicing out background and stuff. And now I'm just using hand pressure for this task. Coming in right like that. I don't need to get this dead flat. I'm just taking out that resulting ridge. You want to make sure you don't lose sight of the corner of the tool in there. And it's just a couple of strokes that are going to get that wood out of there. Just like that. Here it is right here. Because it's that ridge I'm taking down. That one that I just told you is so nice to look at. Right like that. So if you choose to remove that background, that's one way to do it. Here I got fibers that didn't snip off, and I can restrike that initial cut to get a little deeper there, like that. And you see me sliding along. I should go down it like this. And I'm swinging that handle way over like that to move the cutting edge along. Like that. And there's another fiber still stuck there. Okay. While I have that tool out, after I put it away, I'll bevel these areas here, these resulting sort of triangular areas. First, I'll strike a center line through them, like that, and bevel those to start to decorate the backs of them. And this can be hand pressure, this can be mallet work. Ultimately you'll learn to do both. One thing you get here is a study in grain direction. So whenever you're working this V-shaped piece here, you're coming from the juncture of those two V-tool cuts and coming up this way. If I come down it like that, I can cut into those fibers here and lose control of it, and it would grip that way. So hand pressure, I've got the grip way down low, my hand resting on or near the board, and my right hand is providing the traction there. And it's sort of a scooping cut like that. Part of what this hand is doing is brake. It's to stop it. It's easy with hand pressure to go too far, to lose control of your cut and make a mess of things. To end that cut, it's just going to fade out, so then I lower the handle like that to come out of that cut. And then go up the other way. You can switch hands like that. And to do the same thing with a mallet. And one of the things I'm looking at is I want to see that corner of the tool in that V-tool line. If I lose sight of that, it's going to tear this up. And after a while, the shaving is in your line of sight. So you got to kind of go by feel as well. Like that. The mallet worked this way. You got to kind of twist yourself around or learn to swing the mallet with your other hand, which I've never been able to do. So I generally do this cut with hand pressure. And those beveling cuts just provide more shadow, break up the pattern some more, almost bring this stuff forward by dropping this behind. And one of the ways these leaves are decorated is with a very small tool that I don't often use, but I find quite handy when I need it, and it's just a 1/4 inch wide and a fairly shallow curve, and here it's just doing these accents on the edges of these leaves. And there's 2 on each one, and they fan out from the middle like that. Some percussion game here. 2 hits on the carving tool and 1 on the holdfast. Like that. And then you come behind it and just remove a little chip. Again, just more shadow. So to remove that chip, here I was holding the tool vertically. Now I'm standing behind it a little bit and tilt the handle down. Take that out like that. And then flip over this way. And same tool will strike about halfway up here, right on that center line. And then a very deep V-tool cut that's going to start shallow right here and just go straight in like that, just to sort of punctuate that. So to get that line deeper, which makes it broader here, you hold the handle of the tool higher. And sometimes to get them to meet, you need to go in and just snick a little of that off. Like that. Kind of get the tool up on its edge, right there. And there isn't a lot more going on the drawing. There's a more deeply curved. Now we'll go back to the same tool, that same big number 7. and it's got one of these each way, and then a cut behind it. And then just the incised bit on each side of it. And that particularly comes alive, you're going to hit that one a little harder, when you apply a finish to these. You'll see those more pronounced than all of the cuts. Look better when there's a finish on it. So that's the bulk of what we've got in the drawing. No, it isn't. There's these down here as well. So I'll carve this. An exciting morning in the town. So even a simple carving like this on a small piece of wood has a lot of detail, and those details really help it sort of come alive. And one thing that I did when I first carved this recently that is not in the drawing is a cut right there to make that sort of stand forward of that center bit, like that. Oops. And like that. You don't have to do that. Gives it a little more pizzazz, I think. Now, up in here, it's a smaller space, but we're going to treat it pretty much the same way. So I've switched to a narrower number 7. This one's only 3/4 of an inch, but nothing different about it. Having a hard time holding things steady. And then come behind that. Take those chips away. And those are pretty small. I probably won't even bother to take the facets away from here. Same treatment. Here, there. And the sequence you do a lot of these cuts doesn't make a difference. I've saved this little intersecting space here for last. You could do it at the same time you're doing all that stuff. You got the tools out. And, the drawing has that same V-tool cut there as on the lunette itself. And I'll often put either a V-tool line out in this bevel, or use the gouge itself and just strike those incised lines. Here there's not a lot of room, so I'm just going to leave it at that incised line. And then I frequently use this punch, and it is scattered throughout. Like that. And so that's a perfectly good pattern for any horizontal narrow bit. You can do this on a larger scale. This, I said, was 3 inches. You could do it on a bigger scale, make it a box front. You might end up doing some of these curves with your V-tool instead of with a big gouge then.